Chapter 1. The Perfect Family. Justin calmly wiped the grease from his hands, watching his 8-year-old son Cameron bounce a basketball in the driveway. The late June sun painted everything gold, the kind of evening that made you forget the world could be cruel. "Dad, watch this." Cameron launched the ball toward the hoop Justin had installed last summer. It bounced off the rim, and they both laughed. "Keep your elbow in, buddy," Justin called, demonstrating the motion. Justin worked as a chemical engineer for Meridian Water Solutions, specializing in water treatment and contamination analysis. It was steady work, good money, but the real reward was moments like these, coming home to his son's grin, teaching him basketball, being the dad his own father never was. His own childhood had been chaos. Parents who drank more than they parented, a string of foster homes until his younger brother Craig was born, and somehow that baby had been the thing that made their mother really try. By then, Justin was 16, practically raising himself. He'd learned early that if you wanted something, safety, stability, love, you built it yourself, brick by brick. That's what he'd done with Cameron. Every bedtime story, every scraped knee he'd bandaged, every parent-teacher conference he'd attended alone because Crystal had other commitments. He'd built a childhood for his son that was everything his hadn't been. "Justin," Crystal's voice carried from the house, that particular edge it had developed over the past year. "Dinner's almost ready." He exchanged a look with Cameron, who rolled his eyes. His son had noticed too, the way Crystal's warmth had gone cold, mechanical. They walked inside together. Crystal stood at the kitchen counter, her dark hair pulled back, scrolling through her phone instead of watching the stove. She was beautiful in that sharp, angular way, high cheekbones, intense green eyes. But lately, she wielded that beauty like a weapon. "I found something amazing today," she said, not looking up. "There's this lake about 2 hours north, completely off the beaten path. Private access. The water's supposed to be crystal clear, almost tropical looking. I thought we could go this weekend." "A lake trip." Justin tested the idea. "That sounds great. Right, Cam? Can I bring my diving mask?" Cameron's face lit up. "Absolutely." Crystal finally looked up, smiling at Cameron with something Justin couldn't quite read. "It'll be perfect. Just the three of us." Something in her tone made Justin pause, but he pushed the feeling aside. Maybe a family trip was exactly what they needed. Maybe he was imagining the distance between them. "How'd you find this place?" he asked. "A friend recommended it." She turned back to her phone quickly. "Very exclusive. Not many people know about it." That night, after Cameron was asleep, Justin found Crystal in their bedroom, packing a beach bag. "You seem excited about this trip," he said, pulling off his work shirt. "I think it'll be good for us." She didn't meet his eyes. Things have been strained. That was an understatement. Their marriage had been unraveling for months, maybe longer. Justin had tried. Date nights she canceled, conversations she cut short, touches she flinched away from. He'd wondered if there was someone else, but Crystal was too careful, too smart to leave obvious trails. They'd married young, maybe too young. Crystal had been a paralegal when they met, ambitious and magnetic. She'd charmed him completely. But after Cameron was born, something shifted. She'd quit her job, said she wanted to be home with their son, but Justin noticed she was always finding reasons to be elsewhere. Errands that took hours. Friends' houses he'd never seen. A life she kept carefully separate. "Maybe we can talk this weekend," Justin said. "Really talk?" "Sure." Crystal's smile was thin. At the lake. The weekend arrived with cloudless skies. Justin loaded their SUV while Cameron chattered about swimming and fish and building sandcastles, even though lakes didn't have sand like beaches did. But maybe this one was different? Crystal was quiet during the drive, responding to Cameron's enthusiasm with distracted murmurs. She directed Justin down increasingly remote roads, the GPS signal flickering and dying, until they reached a dirt path that opened onto a small, secluded lake. It was beautiful in an eerie way. The water was indeed crystal clear, but had an unusual blue-green tint, almost luminescent. No other cars. No other people. Trees pressed close on all sides, and the silence was absolute except for birdsong. "This is it." Justin stepped out, his engineer's brain noting the odd mineral smell in the air. "Isn't it perfect?" Crystal was already unpacking. "Come on, Cameron. Let's get you in your swim trunks." Justin set up their blanket and cooler, watching his son race toward the water. "Cam, wait for. I'll go with him." Crystal was in her swimsuit. When had she changed? And she took Cameron's hand, leading him to the water's edge. Justin started to follow, but Crystal called back. Why don't you relax? Set up lunch. We'll just cool off for a minute. He watched them wade in, Cameron whooping at the cold, Crystal keeping a careful distance from the water herself. Justin noticed. She stayed in the shallows, barely getting wet, while Cameron dove and splashed in the deeper sections. Something was wrong. Justin couldn't place it, but his instincts, the ones that had kept him alive through a chaotic childhood, were screaming. The way Crystal kept checking her watch, the way she positioned herself to keep Cameron in the deeper water, the way she hadn't actually gotten wet herself. Babe, he called out. Maybe that's enough for now. Let's eat. Crystal's face flashed with something, annoyance, panic, before smoothing into a smile. Just a few more minutes. But Cameron was already running back, hungry and happy, his skin bright pink from the cold water and sun. They ate sandwiches and chips, Cameron shivering slightly despite the warm air. Justin wrapped him in a towel, pulling him close. Best day ever, Cameron murmured, and Justin's heart clenched. They stayed another hour, but Crystal didn't go back in the water. She took photos on her phone, smiling pictures of Justin and Cameron, but when Justin offered to take one of all three of them, she refused. The drive home was quiet. Cameron dozed in the back seat, and Crystal stared out the window, her jaw tight. Thanks for finding that place, Justin tried. Cameron loved it. Yeah. Her voice was distant. It was perfect. That night, Justin woke to screaming. Chapter 2. The Hospital. Justin ran down the hall to Cameron's room, Crystal behind him, and when he flipped on the light, he nearly vomited. Cameron was sitting up in bed, crying, his hands covered in strips of his own skin. It was peeling off in sheets, translucent and wet, revealing raw, angry flesh beneath. Dad, Cameron sobbed. What's happening to me? Jesus Christ. Justin scooped his son up, bedding and all. Crystal, get the car. But Crystal stood frozen in the doorway, her face pale, but her eyes calculating, like she was running through a mental checklist. Crystal, Justin roared. The car? Now. She snapped to attention, grabbing keys, and they raced to the ER at Mercy General. Justin held Cameron in the back seat, his son's skin continuing to slough off his arms, his legs, leaving pieces of himself on Justin's shirt. It's okay, buddy, Justin whispered, his voice breaking. We're going to fix this. I promise. The ER staff took one look at Cameron and rushed him back. A nurse tried to keep Justin in the waiting room, but he wasn't having it. That's my son. I'm not leaving him. They let him stay while they started 4, took blood, swabbed the affected areas. Cameron's screams had faded to whimpers, and Justin held his hand carefully, avoiding the damaged skin. Dr. Randall Hester, the attending physician, was a man in his 50s with steel-gray hair and the calm demeanor of someone who'd seen too much. He examined Cameron thoroughly, asked Justin a series of questions about allergies, exposure to chemicals, recent activities. We went swimming today, Justin said. At a lake. Could it be something in the water? Dr. Hester's expression shifted. What lake? Where exactly? Justin tried to remember. About 2 hours north. I'd have to check with my wife for the exact location. It was pretty remote. I need to run some specific tests, Dr. Hester said. I'll be back. He was gone for 40 minutes, and when he returned, the color had drained from his face. He pulled Justin aside, out of Cameron's earshot. Mr. Conley, what I'm about to tell you is extremely serious. Dr. Hester's voice was low, urgent. Your son's skin damage is consistent with exposure to a highly concentrated alkali solution, likely sodium hydroxide mixed with other corrosive agents. This isn't natural. Someone deliberately contaminated that water. Justin's world tilted. What? That's not possible. I need to know. Who took you to this lake? How did you find it? My wife. Crystal. She found it, said a friend recommended it. Dr. Hester's grip on Justin's arm tightened. Did your wife go in the water? Justin thought back, the memory suddenly sharp as glass. No, she didn't. She barely got wet. Mr. Conley, I need you to listen very carefully. Dr. Hester's eyes were deadly serious. Do not let your wife near your son, and call the police. Right now. The words didn't make sense. Justin's mind rejected them even as they landed. You think Crystal, you think my wife did this on purpose? I think someone did this on purpose, and the person who brought you there knew about it. Your son was exposed to industrial-grade chemicals. His prognosis is uncertain. If the exposure was deep enough, if it's caused systemic damage. Dr. Hester didn't finish the sentence. Justin pulled out his phone with shaking hands. Crystal was in the waiting room. He could see her through the window, pacing, checking her phone. Detective Weber, please, Justin said when the call connected to the police station. This is an emergency. Chapter 3, The Policy. Detective Terrence Weber arrived within 30 minutes. A broad-shouldered man with thoughtful eyes and the careful movements of someone trained to assess threats. Justin told him everything. The lake, Crystal's insistence on the trip, how she'd stayed out of the water, Cameron's condition. We'll need the exact location of this lake, Weber said, taking notes. And I'll need to speak with your wife. They brought Crystal into a private consultation room. Justin watched her face as Weber explained they were investigating Cameron's injuries as potential criminal activity. She performed shock perfectly. The gasping, the hand to her chest, the tearful insistence that she'd been trying to do something nice for the family. The friend who told you about the lake, Weber pressed. I'll need their name and contact information. Crystal hesitated just a fraction of a second. Valerie. My sister, Valerie Calhoun. But she's been traveling internationally. She's a travel blogger. She might have heard about it from someone else. I'll need her contact information anyway. While Weber questioned Crystal, Justin sat with Cameron, who'd been sedated for the pain. Dr. Hester came in with more results. The good news is we don't think there's systemic damage, he said quietly. The bad news is the skin damage is severe. He'll need grafts, possibly multiple surgeries. There will be scarring. And if he'd stayed in that water any longer. But he'll survive? Yes, your son will survive. Justin closed his eyes, something between a prayer and a scream trapped in his throat. Weber came back 2 hours later, his expression grim. Mr. Conley, we need to talk privately. They went to the hospital cafeteria, empty at 3 a.m., and Weber laid it out. We did a preliminary check on your wife's financials. There's a life insurance policy on your son. $2 million, taken out 6 months ago. Your wife is the sole beneficiary. Justin felt like he'd been punched. What? I never signed any. You did. I saw the paperwork. It has your signature. She must have. Justin remembered signing a stack of papers Crystal had brought home. Something about refinancing the house, she'd said. He'd been exhausted from work, trusted her. I didn't know. There's more. Weber hesitated. The insurance agent, Willie Haas, remembers your wife asking specific questions about accidental death clauses, about whether drowning or chemical exposure would be covered. He thought it was odd at the time, but didn't report it. You're saying my wife tried to murder our son for insurance money? I'm saying we have enough for an arrest. But Mr. Conley, proving intent is difficult. A good lawyer could argue she didn't know about the contamination, that she's also a victim. We'll need to find proof that she knew exactly what was in that water. Crystal was arrested that night. Justin watched from Cameron's room as officers led her out in handcuffs. She looked back once, her face a mask of rage and something else, calculation. Even now, she was planning. Justin's brother Craig arrived at dawn, having driven through the night from his home in Denver. He pulled Justin into a crushing hug. I never liked her, Craig said bluntly. Craig was a defense attorney, ironically, and had always been able to read people. There was something off. I should have said something. You did. I didn't listen. They sat together while Cameron slept, the monitors beeping steadily. Justin told Craig everything. The lake, the insurance policy, the arrest. She'll make bail, Craig said grimly. Her family has money. And unless the DA can prove she knew about the contamination beforehand, this could fall apart. Circumstantial evidence in a case like this. He shook his head. So she could walk? She could walk. Justin looked at his son, bandaged and broken, and felt something cold and hard crystallize in his chest. If the system failed, if Crystal walked free, he'd started building his own childhood at 16. He'd built a life, a family, a safe place for his son. And he'd burn the entire world down before he let anyone take that away. Chapter 4, The Other Man. Crystal made bail within 48 hours, just as Craig predicted. $2 million, posted by her mother. The judge ordered her to stay away from Justin and Cameron, but Justin knew how effective restraining orders were. Cameron was stable, but facing months of recovery. Justin took leave from work, sleeping in a chair by his son's hospital bed, watching the doorway like something might come through it. Detective Weber visited daily with updates. The lake had been tested, sodium hydroxide concentrations high enough to strip industrial paint. The EPA was involved now, trying to determine how the contamination happened. "We're looking into your wife's recent movements," Weber said on the third day. "Phone records, credit card statements. We'll find the connection." But Justin couldn't wait for the legal system to do its job. He'd spent too many years of his childhood waiting for adults to save him. It never happened. That night, after Craig left for his hotel, Justin opened his laptop. He was a chemical engineer, and he understood data analysis, pattern recognition. If Crystal had planned this, there would be traces. He started with their shared credit card statements, something he'd never checked carefully because he trusted his wife. The charges told a story: multiple trips to the Lake Vista Motel, a dive about an hour west. Regular visits over the past 4 months, always on Thursdays when Justin worked late. He cross-referenced with their phone records, which Weber had provided. Crystal had one number she called constantly, a local number. Justin ran it through a reverse lookup. Lamont Montoya. The name meant nothing until Justin dug deeper. Lamont Montoya, age 34, worked as a consultant, which meant nothing legitimate. He had a record: fraud, identity theft, served 2 years in Polk Correctional. And he'd been linked to another case, one that had gone cold 5 years ago. Justin found the news articles. A family in Ohio, Gerald and Patricia Finch, lost their daughter to a drowning accident in a contaminated pond. The parents had collected insurance. They'd moved to Mexico right after, never faced charges because the evidence was circumstantial. The investigation revealed the mother had a boyfriend, but he'd disappeared. Justin stared at the boyfriend's photo from the old article. Older, different hair, but the bone structure was the same. Lamont Montoya. He'd done this before. Justin's hands shook as he compiled the information. This was enough to take to Weber, enough to strengthen the case against Crystal. But as he read through the Ohio case file, his stomach sank. The Finches had walked. The evidence wasn't solid enough. The boyfriend was never even charged. He'd been smart enough to keep his distance, to make sure nothing tied him directly to the contamination. Crystal and Lamont were following the same playbook. Even if the police found the connection, proving conspiracy would be difficult. Crystal could claim she'd been manipulated, that she hadn't known about Lamont's past. Lamont would claim he'd never been near the lake. They'd walk, just like the Finches. And Cameron would never be safe. Justin sat in that hospital room, listening to his son's labored breathing, and made a decision. The system had failed to protect him as a child. It was failing to protect his son now. He'd have to do this himself. First, he needed to understand the full scope of their plan. Justin called Willie Haas, the insurance agent, and arranged a meeting, claiming he wanted to discuss changing beneficiaries on the policy. Willie was a nervous man in his 60s, with the hunched posture of someone carrying guilt. They met at a coffee shop. "Mr. Conley, I'm so sorry about your son," Willie started. "I've been cooperating with the police, telling them everything." "I need you to tell me everything too," Justin said. "What exactly did my wife ask you?" Willie's hands trembled around his coffee cup. She was very specific. She wanted to know if accidental death would be covered, if chemical exposure counted, if there were any exclusions for outdoor recreational activities. I thought maybe she worked in insurance, the way she asked. Very professional. Clinical. Did she ever mention anyone else? A partner? No. But Willie leaned in. She asked if policies could be collected by non-relatives in certain circumstances. Like if she wasn't around to collect, could someone else be designated? I told her that's not how it works, but she seemed disappointed. So Crystal and Lamont had planned to split the money, maybe even planned for Crystal to disappear after. A grieving mother who couldn't bear to stay where her son died. Very neat. Did she take out any other policies? Justin asked. Willie's face went pale. On you. $1 million on you, 5 months ago. You signed that paperwork too. The coffee shop seemed to tilt. Justin had signed his own death warrant. We're canceling that, Justin said. Today. And I'm changing the beneficiary on Cameron's policy to my brother. Already done, Willie said quickly. The police had me flag both policies. Nothing can be paid out during the investigation. Justin thanked him and left, his mind racing. Crystal and Lamont had planned to kill Cameron, then him, collect $3 million and disappear. He'd been sleeping next to his would-be killer for months. That night, Justin drove to the Lake Vista Motel. He parked across the street and waited. At 9 p.m., a silver Honda pulled up. Crystal stepped out, looked around carefully, then knocked on room 117. Lamont Montoya opened the door. He was tall, good-looking in a sleazy way, with dark hair and the easy smile of a con artist. He pulled Crystal inside, and through the thin curtains, Justin could see their silhouettes merge into an embrace. He took photos with his phone, time-stamped and geotagged. Evidence. But evidence for what? The police already knew about the affair. This wouldn't prove anything new. Justin sat in his car, watching that motel room, and thought about chemistry, about reactions and catalysts, about how certain compounds were perfectly safe until you mix them. He thought about justice, about revenge, about the thin line between the two. And he started a plan. Chapter 5. The Pattern. Justin threw himself into research with the same focused intensity he'd used to escape his chaotic childhood. He'd learned early that knowledge was power, that understanding systems, chemical, social, legal, gave you leverage. He started with Lamont Montoya's background. Beyond the Ohio case, there were whispers of other incidents. A suspicious death in Florida, a tragic accident in Nevada. Each time, a parent had collected insurance. Each time, the investigation had stalled. And each time, a man matching Lamont's description had been peripherally involved but never charged. Lamont was careful, patient. He'd find vulnerable people, usually women, often single mothers, but sometimes married women unhappy with their lives, and he'd offer them a way out. All they had to do was take out an insurance policy and follow his instructions. Crystal had been perfect for him. Beautiful, dissatisfied, and smart enough to play the role of grieving mother. Justin dug through her past and found the cracks in her facade. Crystal Hobbs, before she became Crystal Conley, had been arrested twice in her 20s for fraud. Small stuff, fake checks, identity theft. The charges had been dropped both times because she'd had good lawyers, courtesy of her wealthy family. She'd worked as a paralegal, yes, but she'd been fired from 2 firms for ethical violations. Justin found her college roommate, Betsy Chandler, who'd been friends with Crystal until she'd caught her stealing jewelry. Crystal was always looking for shortcuts. Betsy told him over the phone, her voice wary. She wanted the wealthy lifestyle without putting in the work. She used to joke about finding a rich husband or winning the lottery. I guess she found another way. Justin's hands clenched. He'd been the rich husband, not wealthy, but stable, with good earning potential. And when that wasn't enough, when Crystal got bored or met someone who offered her something more exciting, she decided to cash in. Did she ever mention wanting children? Justin asked. God, no. Crystal hated kids, so they were expensive and annoying. When you guys had your son, I was shocked. I figured she'd change, but Betsy paused. I'm sorry. I should have said something. It's not your fault. But it was Justin's fault for not seeing it, for trusting the wrong person, for bringing a child into a marriage that had been built on deception from the start. Cameron was improving slowly. The doctors were optimistic about his recovery, though the scars would be permanent. Justin spent every moment he could with his son, reading to him, playing quiet games, promising him that everything would be okay. Is Mom in jail? Cameron asked one afternoon. Justin chose his words carefully. She did something very bad, buddy. Something that hurt you. Did she mean to hurt me? The question broke Justin's heart. Yeah, she did. Cameron processed this, his young face serious. Are you going to keep me safe? Always. I promise you, Cameron. I will always keep you safe. Detective Weber came by with updates. They'd found evidence that Lamont had researched the lake, that he'd known about the industrial contamination from an old spill that had never been properly cleaned up. They'd found text messages between him and Crystal discussing the plan. But Crystal's lawyer was already building a defense. Crystal claimed she'd been manipulated, that she'd thought they were just having an affair, that Lamont must have taken her to the lake knowing it was dangerous. She was the victim of his manipulation, she claimed. It's bullshit, Weber said bluntly. But it might work. Juries are sympathetic to women who claim abuse or manipulation. And without physical evidence that Crystal knew about the contamination beforehand, a map, a conversation where she explicitly discussed it, we might not get a conviction. What about Lamont? He's smarter. He's not talking. His lawyer's going for a plea deal. Testify against Crystal in exchange for reduced charges. But if he does that, Crystal's defense gets stronger. She becomes the poor wife led astray by a predatory boyfriend. Justin felt the walls closing in. So they might both walk? I'll do everything I can to prevent that. But I need you to prepare for that possibility. Justin nodded, but he was already prepared. He'd been preparing since the moment Dr. Hester told him to call the police. That night, Justin went to his work office. Meridian Water Solutions had extensive chemical supplies and research facilities. Justin had security clearance to access most areas. Part of his job involved testing water samples and developing treatment solutions. He spent hours reviewing chemical compounds, their reactions, their effects. He'd spent his career learning how to purify water, how to neutralize toxins. But every reaction had an inverse. Everything that could be neutralized could also be concentrated. He thought about justice, about how the Finches in Ohio had walked away wealthy, about how many other families might have suffered at Lamont's hands, about Cameron's screams as his skin peeled off in sheets. And he thought about poetic justice, about giving people a taste of their own medicine. Justin began creating a formula. Chapter 6, The Surveillance. Crystal's bail conditions required her to wear an ankle monitor and stay within the county, but otherwise, she was free. Justin watched her through a combination of Detective Weber's official updates and his own surveillance. She moved back in with her mother, Barbara Richards, a cold woman who'd clearly passed her narcissism down to her daughter. Justin had met Barbara maybe 5 times in their marriage. Crystal had always made excuses to keep their family separate. Now Justin understood why. She hadn't wanted him getting too close, asking too many questions. Lamont was also out on bail, living in a seedy apartment on the east side. The preliminary hearings were scheduled for 2 months away, giving both sides time to build their cases. Justin used that time. He established patterns. Crystal met with her lawyer, Ellen Shepard, 3 times a week. She met with Lamont once a week at a park, brazenly violating the bail conditions that prohibited them from contacting each other, but doing it carefully enough that it was difficult to catch. Justin documented everything. He followed them, took photos, recorded their meetings from a distance with a telephoto lens and directional microphone he'd bought online. The recordings weren't admissible in court, illegal surveillance, but they gave Justin information. The lawyer thinks we're good, Crystal said during one meeting, her voice tinny through Justin's earpiece. As long as we stick to the story, they can't prove anything. I'm not going to prison for this, Lamont growled. If things go south, I'm taking the deal. You're on your own. You take that deal, and I'll tell them everything. I'll tell them about Ohio, about Florida. I'll tell them you planned all of it. Then we both go down. They were turning on each other, just as Justin had hoped. Criminals always did when the pressure mounted. But Justin couldn't wait for them to destroy each other legally. The process was too slow, too uncertain. And even if they both went to prison, they'd be out eventually. They'd be alive, comfortable, while Cameron carried scars for the rest of his life. No, Justin needed a permanent solution. He refined his formula. The compound he'd created was elegant in its simplicity, a transdermal agent that, when absorbed through skin, would cause progressive nerve damage. Not immediately fatal, but debilitating. Paralysis, starting with extremities and working inward. The victim would be conscious, aware, trapped in their own body. They'd feel what Cameron felt, the horror of their body betraying them, the helplessness, the pain. Justin tested it on tissue samples in the lab, carefully documenting his results under false project names. The compound was perfect, slow-acting enough to seem natural. No antidote. But delivery was the challenge. He needed to ensure both Crystal and Lamont were exposed, and he needed it to be untraceable. The answer came from an unlikely source, Valerie Calhoun, Crystal's sister. Valerie called Justin one evening, her voice hesitant. Justin, it's Val. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but can we meet? They met at a neutral location, a busy diner where they could talk without being overheard. Valerie looked haggard, her usual polished travel blogger appearance replaced with tired eyes and no makeup. "I didn't know," she said immediately. "I swear to God, Justin, I didn't know what Crystal was planning. She asked me about lakes, remote places, and I told her about some locations I'd visited. I thought she wanted to surprise you with a trip. Did you tell the police this?" "Yes, but I don't think they believed me. And Crystal's threatening me. She said if I testify against her, she'll claim I was part of it, that I helped her plan everything." Justin studied her. Valerie had always been different from Crystal, warmer, more genuine. She'd been kind to Cameron. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. "Because that little boy didn't deserve what happened to him. And because I know my sister. She's not going to stop. If she gets off, if she gets out, she'll find a way to finish what she started. She needs that insurance money. She's in debt, deep debt, gambling debts. She's desperate." This was new information. "How much debt?" "Over $200,000. She's been hiding it from everyone, even our mother. The creditors are threatening her. That's why she did this. She was out of options." Justin's mind raced. Desperation made people dangerous, but it also made them predictable. "Val, I need to know their routines. Everything. Where they go, what they do." Valerie hesitated. "Why?" "Because if the legal system fails, I need to protect my son." She understood. After a long moment, she nodded. "Crystal goes to a spa every Friday. Serenity Day Spa on Maple. She gets a massage and facial, usually books the same therapist, Jacqueline Young. 2 hours, like clockwork. And Lamont. He goes to a gym. Iron Haven, on 52nd. Every morning at 6 a.m. Justin thanked her and left, his plan crystallizing. Chapter 7. The Setup. Justin spent 2 weeks preparing. He studied the spa and gym, learning their schedules, their protocols, their vulnerabilities. Both places used massage oils and lotions, substances that would be absorbed through skin. The tricky part was accessing both locations' supplies without suspicion. But Justin had advantages. His work credentials identified him as a chemical engineer for a water treatment company, which gave him legitimate reasons to be in various facilities discussing water quality or chemical testing. He approached Serenity Day Spa first, dressed professionally, carrying a briefcase full of official-looking documents. He asked to speak with the manager, Leanne Hunt, a stressed woman in her 40s who looked perpetually overwhelmed. "Ms. Hunt, I'm Justin Conley from Meridian Water Solutions. We're doing a courtesy inspection of local businesses to test for water contamination following the recent EPA concerns." Leanne's eyes widened. "Contamination? Is it serious?" "Probably nothing, but we're required to test any facility that uses water in direct client services. Spas, salons, medical offices. Just a precaution." She let him in. Justin tested their water supply, legitimately, and found nothing wrong, which he reported. But while Leanne was distracted with a client emergency, Justin slipped into the supply room. Rows of massage oils, lotions, aromatherapy blends. He found the brand Jacqueline Young used. He'd watched through the window during Crystal's last visit, noted the bottles. A lavender blend, expensive and organic. Justin swapped the full bottle with an identical one he'd prepared. Same color, same consistency, same smell. But with his compound mixed in. One massage with this oil, and Crystal would absorb enough to begin the process. He did the same at Iron Haven Gym, posing as a facilities inspector checking for water quality issues in the locker rooms. The gym manager, a muscle-bound man named Tommy Marquez, barely glanced at Justin's credentials before waving him through. The gym's locker room had dispensers of body wash and lotion. Justin replaced the lotion in the men's locker room, knowing Lamont always showered after his workout. He'd watched the routine a dozen times. Workout, shower, lotion, leave. Both traps were set. Justin returned to the hospital, where Cameron was being prepared for his first skin graft surgery. His son looked small in the hospital gown, brave but scared. "Will it hurt?" Cameron asked. "They'll make sure you don't feel anything during the surgery," Justin promised. "And I'll be right here when you wake up." "You're always here, Dad." "Always." As they wheeled Cameron away, Justin felt the weight of what he'd done, what he was doing. In another life, maybe he would have trusted the system, let justice take its course. But that life had ended when his son screamed in agony, betrayed by the person who should have protected him most. Justin had learned long ago that sometimes you had to become the thing you feared to protect what you loved. Friday came. Crystal went to her spa appointment. Justin watched from across the street as she entered Serenity Day Spa at exactly 2 p.m. She emerged 2 hours later, looking relaxed. No immediate reaction. The compound took time to absorb fully, to begin its work. That night, Crystal went home to her mother's house. By morning, she was complaining of numbness in her fingertips. Monday, Lamont went to his gym. Same routine. Workout, shower, lotion. Justin watched him leave, looking normal. By Tuesday, Lamont called his lawyer complaining of weakness in his hands. By Wednesday, both Crystal and Lamont were experiencing progressive symptoms. Numbness spreading up their arms and legs. Muscle weakness. Difficulty with fine motor control. They both went to doctors. Tests were run. Results came back inconclusive. Some kind of neuropathy, the doctors said. Possibly an autoimmune response. We'll need more time to diagnose. By Friday, 1 week after exposure, both of them were hospitalized. The numbness had spread to their torso. They couldn't walk without assistance, couldn't feed themselves, and the doctors still didn't know what was wrong. Chapter 8. The Unraveling. Detective Weber came to see Justin at the hospital, where Cameron was recovering from his surgery. Something strange is happening, Weber said. Crystal and Lamont, they're both sick. Same symptoms, progressive paralysis. Doctors can't figure it out. Justin kept his expression neutral. What do the doctors think it is? They're testing for everything. Heavy metal poisoning, toxins, viruses. Nothing's coming back positive. It's like their nervous systems are just shutting down. Karma, Justin said quietly. Weber gave him a sharp look. Justin, where were you last Friday? Here. With my son. You can check the visitor logs. And the Friday before? Also here. Cameron's surgery was scheduled. I haven't left his side except to grab food. It was true. The visitor logs would confirm it. Justin had set his traps 2 weeks before Crystal's spa appointment, before Lamont's gym session. He'd been nowhere near them when they were exposed. I have to ask, Weber said. And I need you to be honest. Did you have anything to do with their illnesses? Detective, I'm a water treatment engineer, not a doctor. I don't know anything about progressive paralysis. Weber studied him for a long moment. The DA is moving forward with the case against them. We have enough for conspiracy to commit murder, even if they're both in wheelchairs when they go to trial. Will they go to trial? Their lawyers are pushing for a plea deal now. Crystal's especially. She's terrified. Whatever's happening to her, it's progressing fast. She can barely speak. Justin felt no satisfaction, no triumph. Just a cold, settled certainty. Good, he said. Let them be afraid. But there was a complication. Valerie Calhoun called Justin. Her voice panicked. Justin, Crystal's asking for me. She wants to see me. She's in the hospital, and she's insisting I visit. Don't go. I have to. She's my sister. But Justin, she's saying strange things. She thinks someone did this to her. She's paranoid, claiming she's been poisoned. Let her think what she wants. She can't prove anything. She's asking about you. She told the police to investigate you. Justin's pulse quickened. What did you tell them? The truth. That you've been at your son's bedside. But Justin, if they dig deep enough, there's nothing to find. I was careful. But had he been careful enough? Justin replayed every step in his mind. The spa, the gym, the modified compounds. He'd worn gloves, used cash, left no paper trail. The compounds would metabolize in their bodies, leaving no trace. The substituted bottles at the spa and gym had been replaced with the originals after a few days, part of his follow-up inspection. Still, he couldn't be complacent. That night, Justin reviewed his work logs, his lab notes. He'd been meticulous about documenting everything under false project codes, but he deleted them anyway. Wiped the servers, the backups. If anyone looked, they'd find research into water treatment solutions, nothing more. He disposed of his notes, burning them in a fire pit at his brother Craig's property. Craig watched silently. Do I want to know? Craig asked. No. Are you safe? Is Cameron safe? We're safe. Craig nodded. Then that's all that matters. Crystal and Lamont's conditions continued to deteriorate. Within 2 weeks, both were completely paralyzed from the neck down. They could breathe on their own. Justin's compound had been specific in its targeting, but they couldn't move, couldn't feed themselves, couldn't control their bodily functions. They were trapped in their own bodies, just as Justin had designed. Their lawyers withdrew the plea deal requests. The DA moved forward with full trials. Crystal and Lamont would face justice, but not the justice Justin had wanted from the system. This was better. Chapter 9. The Aftermath. Cameron's recovery progressed steadily. The skin grafts were successful, and though he'd carry scars, the doctors were optimistic about his long-term prognosis. He started physical therapy, learning to move without pain, rebuilding his confidence. Justin never left his side. Crystal and Lamont's trials were held simultaneously. Both were brought into court in wheelchairs, attended by nurses. Crystal could barely speak, her words slurred and slow. Lamont stared straight ahead, his face a mask of rage and fear. The evidence was overwhelming. Text messages, financial records, Willie Haas's testimony about the insurance policies, and the chemical analysis of the lake water. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty, both of them. Conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, child endangerment. The judge sentenced them each to 25 years to life. You will spend the rest of your days in prison, the judge said coldly. And given your medical conditions, those days will be spent in the prison hospital, dependent on the state for every basic need. You sought to profit from your child's death, Miss Conley. Instead, you've earned a life of complete helplessness. May God have mercy on your souls. Justin watched from the gallery, Cameron beside him. His son had wanted to come, to see the bad people go away. Justin had hesitated, but ultimately agreed. Cameron needed closure too. As the bailiffs wheeled Crystal and Lamont out, Crystal's eyes found Justin's. Even through the paralysis, the hatred was clear. But so was the fear. She knew. Maybe not the specifics, but she knew Justin had done something. She just couldn't prove it. The police had investigated. Detective Weber had questioned Justin multiple times. They'd tested his alibi, checked his work records, searched for any connection between him and the spa or gym. They found nothing. Because there was nothing to find. Justin had learned from his chaotic childhood that survival meant being smarter than everyone else, planning 3 steps ahead, leaving no traces. He'd applied those same skills to protecting his son. After the trial, Detective Weber approached Justin outside the courthouse. Justice is served, Weber said carefully. Yes, it is. Justin, off the record, those medical conditions. The doctors never did figure out what caused them. Sometimes things happen that we can't explain, Justin said. Maybe it was karma. Weber held his gaze for a long moment. Maybe. Just know that if I ever find proof of anything, justice cuts both ways. I'm sure it does, Detective. They shook hands, and Weber walked away. Justin knew he'd live with suspicion for the rest of his life. Weber would always wonder. Others might too, but wonder wasn't proof. Suspicion wasn't evidence. And Justin had no regrets. 6 months later, Cameron started 3rd grade. The kids asked about his scars, and he told them the truth, that he'd been hurt, but his dad had saved him. Justin had taken a new position at Meridian, one with better hours and less travel. He'd sold the house, bought a smaller place in a better school district. Started fresh. Crystal remained in the prison hospital, completely dependent on care. She'd filed multiple appeals, all denied. Lamont had done the same. They'd both live out their sentences unable to move, unable to escape their own bodies. Poetic justice. Craig visited often, bringing dinner, playing with Cameron. You're a good dad, he told Justin one evening, watching Cameron chase fireflies in the backyard. I'm just doing what I have to do. No, you're doing what most people can't. You're protecting your kid no matter what. Justin thought about that. About the line between protection and revenge, between justice and retribution. About how he'd crossed it without hesitation. He's my son, Justin said simply. I'd do anything for him. I know. That's what makes you a good dad. That night, after Cameron was asleep, Justin sat on his porch with a beer, looking up at the stars. He thought about the choices he'd made, the person he'd become. He'd killed 2 people, in a way. Not directly, not immediately, but he'd stolen their mobility, their independence, their future. And he felt nothing but satisfaction. Because Cameron was safe. Cameron was healing. Cameron had a future. That was all that mattered. Justin raised his beer to the night sky, a silent toast to justice. The real kind, the earned kind, the kind that actually protected the innocent. Then he went inside, locked the doors, and checked on his son one more time before bed. Cameron slept peacefully, his scars already fading, his nightmares less frequent. Safe. and that was worth everything. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.